And we're back with another episode of Today and Tomorrow in Scottsdale with Don and Kevin. Kevin, how are you?
Don, how are you?
I'm always good, man, because it's that time of the week when we get a chance to get together, you and I, and talk about the really cool things that are happening with the really cool people in Scottsdale.
I'm meeting some interesting people.
It's awesome stuff, man. Of course, today is like none other. Every week it gets better. It gets better every week, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And today we've got Charlie Popeck. He's a longtime leader in sustainability and green building and the founding principal of Green Ideas Building Science Consultants. Charlie helped launch the Arizona chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council, and he's dedicated his career to helping communities create buildings that are healthier, more resilient, and better stewards of the places that we call home. Charlie, what a great resume you've got going, buddy, and welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. Before we start talking about all the things that you're doing in the green science area, got to talk a little bit about your background and kind of where you came from, how you got here, and how you ended up in this career that you're in. But you got to start with one thing. You're from Pittsburgh, aren't you?
I am from Pittsburgh, yes,
You know,
sir.
Kevin,
But the two of you,
takes
guys
the two
just
of
had,
us,
go
buddy.
ahead, talk about sandwiches or whatever it is you talk about.
we got all kinds. We got chipped ham sandwiches. We could talk about that. We got Iron City beer.
What's
we
a
could talk
chipped
about
ham
that.
sandwich?
It's our own version of how you make a ham sandwich.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's chipped. It says when you take the ham,
cream in
you
it?
chip it. There's no cream. You could put cream in it, but no, you don't need to. Remember the chipped ham,
Yeah, well,
Charlie?
it's really thin sliced. So you know how you slice the ham, but they just chip it. Like you said, just very thin sliced. It's, paper thin.
Really?
Tastes better that way.
Yeah.
It tastes even better with an Iron City.
That's right.
Yeah,
Iron
for
City
sure.
beer.
But talk about your background, Charlie. How'd you get from Pittsburgh all the way to Arizona?
Well, I served a carpentry apprenticeship in Pittsburgh, PA, when I got out of high school, and left in 1979 and went to Southern California. Wanted to kind of get out of the cold weather, like we were talking about earlier, and went to Southern California. Worked as a carpenter out of the Long Beach Carpenters Union Hall for several years, and after I decided, hey, I don't want to be doing this when I'm 60 years old, I put myself through school there in Southern California, and California was good to me. I mean, pretty much free college. I did have to pay for my tuition out of pocket, but I got my construction engineering and management degree at Cal Poly Pomona, and then moved to Arizona here in 1993. Worked for several architects and contracting firms and such over the years. And then,
Why'd you move to Arizona, though? What
well,
brought you out here?
we came out here to visit my ex-wife's family for Thanksgiving several times. And it's like, wow, that's my favorite time here. It's just a great time of year in Arizona. So I had one daughter at the time, and she was getting into school, and it's like, would like to get settled somewhere before she got too far into school, and, sold my house there, bought twice the house here for half the money, in East Mesa, and then, that's how I wound up here.
And you left in 79, Pittsburgh?
79.
Wasn't that the year that Pittsburgh went to the World Series that year?
And the Super Bowl. They did both.
Yeah.
Did they really?
Yeah.
They did both. World Series and Super Bowl, back when things were good in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And was that the year we also won the Stanley Cup? Because I know one year we did
79.
all three of them.
Yeah, we did, but that was just like a year or two later.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, I worked for architects, engineers, contractors in town here, and then I went and finished my MBA here later in life once I had 3 kids. And then I worked for what they considered a green product firm called Ecrete. It was a lightweight, highly insulating concrete block product, a wall system. And so I got involved in the Scottsdale Green Building Program, which is one of the original and more prominent green building programs in the country, Scottsdale and Austin, Texas. Anthony Floyd, a local architect, ran the program, a City of Scottsdale employee, and I did that for a few years, and that's right when the U.S. Green Building Council, or the USGBC, that developed this rating system for green buildings called LEED. They're a nonprofit out of Washington, D.C., and they said, hey, if we really wanted to expand this thing, because there was no green building standard in our industry, and that's what they came up with. If we wanted to expand it, we should open up or offer groups to open up chapters around the country. So we said, this group of us over at the Scottsdale Green Building Program, we said, let's do it. So we started a 501c3, filled out all the paperwork, applied. We ended up being the second ever chapter in the United States. And it grew to be like, I think 87 chapters at one point in time. So in many ways, we're the leader, or one of the leaders in the sustainability movement nationwide.
That actually it leads me to a question here, because you were working on sustainability before it really was mainstream.
Yes.
So what first convinced you that green building wasn't a trend, but actually a necessity?
Well, it's just common sense is what it is. It's not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. It's just, designing and building and operating buildings that are energy efficient, water efficient in the desert, right? Common sense, and also healthy for people. So we're using non-toxic products, paints and glues and adhesives that aren't off-gassing and making people sick. A lot of people think, hey, that new car smell that you get when you love that, right? Well, what that's glues and adhesives off-gassing
Sure
in
smells
that car.
good though, man. I'll tell you what.
It does. So
I never thought of that before.
No, I'm going to say, leave the new smell in the car with showroom, please.
Yeah.
So that's what that is. And the same thing with building products. All the newer building products that we have, they're glued together and spackled together and everything, with used to be more harmful products than there are today, because the industry's come quite a ways since then.
I could tell by your expression when you were talking about those early days of Scottsdale, what was defined as energy efficient then is probably not very energy efficient now.
That's correct. In fact, we're currently on LEED version 5. So when it first came out, it was LEED version 4 back in 1999 was when LEED was first developed and introduced to the marketplace. Then it went to version 2, then on to version 3, and we're on version 4 or 5. It's moving into version 5 right now, and with each new version, it keeps getting more and more and more stringent. So to meet the energy baseline, you have to be more efficient than you were in the previous version. Same with water. You have to save more water in order to get a LEED certification today than you would a couple years ago with the previous version of LEED.
When do you think the industry really kind of caught on to this as being something that was really important? Back in the 70s, 80s? When did this start really coming together?
No, not really. I mean, that's when it all started.
Yeah.
In fact, Jimmy Carter put PV panels on the White House.
He did.
Way back in the 70s, and then Reagan came in, took him down, said we shouldn't have to live this way. And so anyway, it could have happened way back then.
I wonder what was happening in the East Wing of the White House, but we won't get into that right now.
Yeah, a lot of the politics stuff happened, but really there was no green building standard out there till LEED was developed and introduced in 1999.
1999.
So, yeah, and it's a guideline. It's what it is. It's there's a checklist. Makes you it's divided up into different categories. One of them is location and transportation. So where you're locating your building, is it near mass transportation? So encouraging people to not everybody drive to work, one person per car. Maybe locate it near the light rail or bus stops, that sort of thing. Then you get into sustainable sites. So, doing things like keeping your stormwater for your site on your site instead of dumping it all out into the street. Then you need more storm drain systems. Then you get into the energy and atmosphere category of LEED, and it's a point-based system. Mm-hmm. And so you can do certain things to save energy, right? Renewable energy is a big part of that. Then materials and resources, so it encourages the use of non-toxic materials. Then indoor environmental quality is the last main category, where we're trying to create, healthy indoor environments, because let's face it, that's why we build buildings, to put people in, right? So we're trying to keep those environments clean and fresh, bring more fresh air ventilation into the buildings, that sort of thing. So it's a comprehensive program, and there just was nothing like it before. And so that's why when it started catching on, right about 1999.
What are the incentives? I mean, it's not a requirement as much as it's unless you want to be good stewards of your communities. So that's a good cause all by itself. But what are the other incentives and motivations for people?
Well, there's only a few states that have actual tax incentives for LEED. Some states have incentives for energy efficiency or water efficiency, but not really LEED. Like Arizona has nothing for LEED. Las Vegas, on the other hand, I don't know exactly where the program stands today, but a few years ago, the state of Nevada Office of Energy was offering you builders and developers up to 50% of your property taxes could get abated for a 10-year period if you got LEED certification.
motivation.
And I think they still have it, but it's probably been modified since then. But, other organizations have committed to the LEED program. Like, for instance, in 2005, ASU committed to doing all their buildings LEED silver level. So there's 4 levels: certified, silver, gold, and platinum, depending on how many points you get and in which categories. So ASU committed to that. So anything built at ASU will be at least LEED silver. And Scottsdale committed to LEED silver in 2005 also.
Okay.
Well, but actually it was LEED gold. They were the first city, Scottsdale, to commit to LEED gold for their buildings.
First city in Arizona?
Scottsdale.
Yeah. Was that the first city in Arizona to do that?
It was the first city in the country,
In that
I
country,
believe. So
wow.
again, we're really been leaders over the years.
Nice to see that happening in Scottsdale.
Yes.
We do have the ability to be forward-thinking in this city, despite what may be happening these days.
2005, though, he said, right?
I understand.
That was a while ago.
I know it's not doesn't reflect current conditions, and we
know.
don't get into that today either.
No.
But it's good to hear, though. I didn't no idea
Yes.
Scottsdale was the first city. That's really pretty cool.
Yeah,
it
and
is really cool.
they also encourage private developments to become LEED certified at some level, like some of the iconic buildings here that you guys have probably seen, like Optima Camelview Village. Right here,
Right.
with the landscaping hanging
Oh,
off
yeah,
all
right,
the.
right.
Yeah, there's like on that project, there's I think 22 acres of landscaping on an 11-acre site, because there's all the green roofs. So there's it's pretty impressive, because one of our big problems here in Arizona with all the heat and everything is the urban heat island effect.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's when all this pavement surfaces and roof surfaces heat up during the day, and then sun goes down at night, and it radiates heat all night, and so that's why it doesn't really cool down here at night anymore. In fact, they say the average nighttime temperature here in Phoenix is 20 degrees higher than it was, I think, 20 years ago.
I believe
Really?
it. I believe
Which
that.
is crazy.
Yeah.
So we do things like promote reflective pavement systems. So concrete is better than asphalt, right? And like roof systems are a lot of times black. So you would install a reflective roofing or reflective roof coatings, white roofs. And so that helps not only with your energy efficiency on the building envelope, but it helps with the urban heat island effect. And that's all the types of things that LEED encourages.
Plant more trees too, and
Absolutely.
talk about that in downtown Phoenix a lot. When I was working down there, that we didn't have a lot of trees downtown, and just put some more trees in, and suddenly you've cooled things down a little bit. Things that seem simple but don't get done sometimes.
Yeah.
Kind of weird.
Yeah.
Talk about daylight modeling. You've used that term with me a few times, and I think I know what it means. It seems like it's pretty self-explanatory,
Yeah,
but it seems kind of cool. Tell us about daylight modeling.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. Well, there's energy modeling and daylight modeling. That's required by LEED also. And that's what we do as building science consultants. So there's many different energy modeling and daylighting programs out there. And I have several people that do that for me. I'm not smart enough to do it, but these guys are. And so what it is you take a look at the building envelope, how it's oriented. All this data goes into the model, right? So how's the building oriented? Basically, you want the long axis of your building going east and west, right? Eliminating or reducing east-west windows because they contribute to solar heat gain. And if you're daylighting, you want most of your windows on the north and south of the building, which would be on the longer side of your buildings, because you get more sunlight that way. And in the northern hemisphere, that's where you want to get your daylight from the north and south. So energy modeling and daylighting is similar. You put all these parameters in. What kind of glass do you have? I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of different glass types out there. Low E coatings, double pane, triple pane, all these different. I mean, look at all the buildings out there. They all look different, right? Some are more glassy and mirrored looking. So you choose what glass works best, and all these go into the model, an energy model or a daylight model. And then, hit the button, calculate, where are you? And so you use these programs as a design tool. And you can play what-if scenarios during the building design phase. So what if I change this glass out into this other glass? What if I go from double pane to triple pane? How does that affect the energy performance or the daylighting in the building? You put that different factor in for that different glass,
Right.
and it'll spit out where you're at as far as that compares it to one of the ASHRAE standards. And ASHRAE is the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers.
There you go.
ASHRAE.
It's a mouthful.
That's an engineering group, and they've developed these standards that are used every day out there in our world. And that's our baseline for where we need to be. Minimum energy efficiency or daylighting has different standards, and you have to meet that standard or exceed it. The more you exceed it, you get more and more and more lead points. So some people might say, oh, yeah, that's, like cute, lead silver, lead gold, who cares? Well, as you go up in certification levels from certified to silver to gold to platinum, it's not just a cool name. You're getting a more efficient building, and your operating and maintenance costs come way down, which is the biggest advantage of high performance or green building.
So when you hear people, when you hear high performance buildings, people don't really know what that means. So what's the biggest misconception that you run into when you talk to people about that?
Well, that's just it. I prefer the term high performance because I think
I would too.
I think that green is kind of overused
Yeah.
a little bit out there. Green this, green the other, but they're used interchangeably. Sustainable building, green building, high performance building.
Yeah,
I prefer high performance.
You should use some of the terms that are popular right now and use protein in your building. It's a high protein building, right? Because everything's protein now. You see the commercials?
Oh, yeah,
On everything is, we have a lot of protein in our product, no matter what it is, or AI. So I have an AI building.
Could do that.
True.
And eat more chicken too, right?
Yeah.
Of course. So you talk about daylight design and all that. So how do these strategies actually change how people experience being in a building day to day?
Right.
Do they notice that? Or, they even know they're in a LEED building?
Right. Well, again, one of my sustainability principles that I teach at the School of Architecture is here in Scottsdale, and also at ASU, I teach sustainable construction over there. And it's one of my principles is man is an animal. We're mammals, right? We're supposed to be out there. But
Yeah.
EPA says that typically we spend 90% of our time indoors. So we're trying to make a connection for these animals, us humans, that are indoors to the outside. So things like daylighting, when you have lights or daylight a building, and you have windows that you can look out. When people can look outside and see something other than just a bare wall, you make a connection to the outdoors for people, and that makes you feel better. And there's been a lot of productivity studies done as far as children's test scores in daylit schools are higher, because you feel we're supposed to be out there, right? But we're in here. Retail sales are higher in daylit retail buildings, where they're selling clothes, or Walmarts and all that kind of stuff. Office buildings, of course, you're more productive when you feel a connection to the outdoors. So we do that and bring more fresh air ventilation into the buildings than typical. So you exceed some of those ASHRAE standards I mentioned. So you bring more fresh air ventilation into a call center building than you would in a warehouse building, because you have more people in a call center, right, than in a warehouse. So again, we're just trying to make that connection between these human beings and the outdoors.
Most of what we're talking about involves commercial building. How does this play in the residential space?
Same thing. Same
Even
concept.
for homes and kind of stuff?
Yes, sir.
Are there LEED principles for individual homes?
Yeah, it's the same concept.
Same concept?
In fact, there's different LEED programs. When the program came out, and there's other green building rating systems out there, like Green Globe's Energy Star, which you've probably heard of, is also a rating system for buildings, not just your washer and dryer and your refrigerator. It's a energy efficient standard for homes also. So anyway, there's different standards that are out there. And I'm sorry, what was the question?
Like individual homes, how does it play off in residential spaces?
Yeah, so it's really the same concepts. You look at the site, you look at the materials, the water, the energy. It's really the same thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So where's this all heading? Kevin talked about AI. That's real. I'm not sure about protein, but definitely about AI. That's a very real thing coming down the road. So where's this all going in the next, I don't know, year, 5 years, 10 years? What do you see it down the road for all of this stuff?
Well, it's like I mentioned before, it's common sense is what it is, and it's hard to argue with common sense. But again, a lot of it's coming down to politics. Some people, see the value in it, and other people don't see the value in it. And there is a common misconception that what we're talking about here with high performance, green, sustainable buildings, it costs more, right? That's false.
Okay,
and
debunk that.
I might ask you if you said, "What does this cost?" I would ask, "Well, what kind of cost are you talking about?" Typically, people are talking about first cost or initial costs, right? That happens one time. Say you're a building owner that you're going to be in that building for 20 years. You pay designers to design the building, builders to build the building. But now you have to operate and maintain that building for the next 20 years, right? So that's why you want your electricity bills to be lower and your water bills to be lower and your people to be more productive, because that's a real cost of owning a building or a business, right? People are the biggest cost of owning any business, the salaries that you pay. So that's what we focus on is life cycle cost, because it's not only the first cost, that is a portion of life cycle cost. We're looking at operating cost, maintenance cost, refurbishment cost, and then disposal cost when that building reaches the end of its useful life. So that's considered life cycle costing. So you have to consider all that when you're designing and building and owning a building. Unfortunately, a lot of times with developers, they want to build a building, dump it, sell it, go do the next one.
Get in, get out.
So it's like, how cheap can I do it? And that's part of the problem. Then you're using a lot more energy than you should, a lot more water than you should. And we see all the development going on around here. Wow, it's getting crazy. So I think we need to be more responsible moving forward and maybe introduce more of those incentives that you talked about earlier to encourage people to do this, because a lot of people just don't know about it, and they think, hey, it's got to cost more, right? We're pretty familiar with our cars, where we can say, hey, I want to buy that car, and what's the MPG, right? That's my operating cost, right? But a lot of people don't relate that to buildings.
Yeah, good point.
But it's very important, and of course, talking about climate change, buildings are the biggest contributor to climate change, because, we have all these air conditioning systems and central plants operating and heating and cooling buildings. It takes a lot of energy, and it creates a lot of pollution too.
So how's technology changing your business?
Well, it's come a long way over the years. Like, great example is like LED lighting. We used to use incandescent lighting, and you touch that light bulb, you burn your hand, right? And then it went into more compact fluorescence. And now we got LED lightings. And only a few years ago, 10 years even, LED lighting was more expensive. But the cost has come down so far as technology has improved, manufacturing methods have improved, and now LED lighting is less expensive than any of these other types of lighting types, and they cost like, probably like 1/50th to operate. Even in cars, if you look at cars today, you know how you used to have the little light bulb in your tail lights?
Yeah.
You look at the cars now, it's all the little it's LED lighting is what it is. Why? Because they last forever, they don't go out on you, and they're cheaper.
Yeah.
So that's just one example of how technology has affected the industry. And I mentioned the different glass types earlier and such. It used to be piece of glass on the outside of your building, but there's hundreds of glass types now that you can incorporate into buildings. And then as far as materials go, architects used to have to do a lot of research to find sustainable materials for their buildings. Well, over the years, product manufacturers have got on board saying that, hey, if we don't get with the program here, these architects and engineers aren't going to specify our products. We're not going to really have good sales. So one of the main differences between, say, LEED version 3 and LEED version 4 was the introduction of the EPDs, which are environmental product declarations. So what that is a report card for your product. So if you're a product manufacturer, you would do the testing and to prove that your product is sustainable. Here's what goes into that product. Here's how much energy goes into that product. Here's the bad things about this product. And it's all on one report card. So LEED, instead of having to look at all these individual materials as we did in the past, they now require you have to have at least 20 products that have an EPD available. And that's the documentation that you send in to the U.S. Green Building Council in order to get those material points for LEED. So those EPDs have been used all around the world for years, but we've never got on board with it here in the U.S. So we're finally getting to that point.
Good to know that for sure.
Yeah, and it makes life easier for designers. Because now instead of doing all this research, it's just, hey, do you have an EPD? Show me your EPD. You know, and that's a good product. Let's specify it.
That works well.
Hey, Charlie, you can't hardly pick up a newspaper or watch the news without somebody talking about building a data center in your community now these days. Data centers usually have a rap of using a lot of energy, a lot of water, but are there LEED certified data centers?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, when LEED first came out, it was developed for office buildings late in 1999. Over the years, there's been different LEED programs developed for different building types. We now have LEED for homes. You mentioned residential earlier. We have LEED for new construction, LEED for commercial interiors. So you could take a building like this that's not LEED certified, and you're going to do your interiors. You're going to do a TI, tenant improvement, and you could do it according to LEED for commercial interior standards, and your suite in this building could be LEED CI certified. We also have a LEED for neighborhood development. I don't know if you guys have heard about the Novus Innovation Corridor at ASU.
No.
I've heard of it, but tell me, just give us a brief explanation.
Well, where the golf course was at ASU, 330 acres, right, of grass. There's no more golf course there. Right. The Novus Innovation Corridor, look it up online. It's amazing. They have implemented a program called LEED for Neighborhood Development, or LEED ND. It's not a building-centric LEED, it's more of a land planning LEED. So when you build a city, which is what they're doing at the Novus Innovation Corridor, they're building a city there. And so we were able to get LEED certification there. I've been working for ASU and Catellus Development, who are the master developers over there, for the last 7 years. And now all the individual developers, sub-developers are coming in doing the individual buildings. So I've done the first 7 buildings over there at Novus Innovation Corridor. We've done a couple for Transwestern Development, Aspen Heights, Fox Restaurants. Just did 3 new restaurants in there. And this is a 330-acre, 20-year development. And ASU committed to LEED years ago. So when they first brought me in, we were deciding, hey, do we want to stick with LEED, or do we want to come up with our own, Novus green building rating system? Well, after much discussion, we decided to keep it as LEED because, again, USGBC upgrades and makes LEED better every couple years. If we didn't use LEED, we'd have to do all those upgrades ourselves. So we decided to keep it LEED-centric on everything over there. So it's pretty cool.
Charlie, we learned a lot today.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was
Come a long way since you guys were youngsters, and your dad told you to turn the lights off when you leave the room, right?
back in the Pittsburgh days, and now look where we are today. But learned a lot. This is, I think, totally relevant for our world today in terms of our attention to climate and being good stewards of our earth, if you will.
Absolutely.
And so, Charlie, thanks for all. Kevin, another great example of another person here in Scottsdale doing wonderful work.
You know, I finished the interviews, and I'm like, who knew? I didn't.
Ooh, none of us did. Hopefully, a lot more people will too. But fantastic, Charlie. Thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
And thanks for all the work you're doing.
Thanks.
And thanks to all of you for listening. We'll be back with our next episode soon on Today and Tomorrow in Scottsdale.